Let me tell you something, life is about patterns, and relationships are no different. We all crave love, connection, and certainty, yet sometimes we find ourselves with people who run the other way when things get too real. That's the avoidant. They pull back, they distance themselves, thinking they're in control. But here's the truth. The moment you step into your power, the moment you stop chasing and start valuing yourself, something shifts. That's when the avoidant realizes the gravity of what they've lost. And in that instant, they're not just losing you, they're losing the chance to experience the deepest level of love, growth, and fulfillment that only comes when two people meet without fear. Today, I want to show you not only what happens when they realize it, but why this moment can be the turning point for you, the moment you claim back your worth, your strength, and your future. Avoidants run until reality hits. In the beginning, they act like they don't need anyone. They create distance, build walls, and convince themselves that independence is their ultimate strength. They believe that keeping emotions locked away protects them from pain, from rejection, from the possibility of losing control. Every time intimacy gets close, they retreat. They think pulling away means they are winning. They tell themselves they are safe when in reality, they are only avoiding the truth that human beings are wired for connection. When they meet someone who truly gives, who loves deeply, and who offers consistency, they don't know what to do with it. Instead of leaning in, they sabotage it. They test boundaries, they ignore calls, they keep conversations shallow, all while convincing themselves that nothing is missing. They run because they fear the very thing they crave. And the irony is, the more they run, the more they set themselves up for the biggest shock of their lives. The moment comes when the person they've been avoiding, the one who gave their heart, their time, their energy, finally stops waiting. At first, the avoidant doesn't notice. They assume the love will always be there, that the attention will always return. They've grown used to the idea that they can disappear and come back whenever they choose. But eventually, reality hits. The messages stop, the energy shifts. The person who once poured love into them starts pouring that same love into themselves. And this is the moment that shakes the avoidant at their core. When reality sets in, it doesn't arrive quietly. It crashes like a storm. They realize the one who cared, who stayed, who believed in them, has stepped into self-worth. The silence becomes deafening. What used to feel like freedom now feels like emptiness. What once felt like control now feels like loss. And the avoidant begins to understand something they never prepared for. You cannot run forever without consequences. They replay the memories, the laughter, the support, the comfort that felt so constant suddenly becomes a haunting reminder of what they pushed away. They look around for the connection they thought they could replace, and they discover that not everyone offers the same love. Not everyone has the same patience. Not everyone will wait for them to figure it out. They realize the person they lost wasn't just another chapter. They were the turning point. The human mind resists loss more than it seeks gain. For the avoidant, this truth becomes a painful awakening. They thought avoiding intimacy would protect them, but in the end, it only stripped them of the one thing that could have healed their fear. Running no longer feels like strength. It feels like weakness exposed. The illusion of control is shattered, and reality forces them to confront the truth. The cost of avoidance is greater than the fear they tried to escape. When someone with an avoidant attachment style walks away, they often convince themselves that they are protecting their independence, their comfort, or their sense of control. They believe that distancing themselves will give them relief, that stepping back will shield them from the intensity of real intimacy. On the surface, it seems like they win. They get space. They get silence. They get to live without the weight of emotional responsibility. But what they don't realize is that in the very act of avoiding, they set in motion the one thing they fear the most, loss. Avoidants carry a deep, hidden fear of abandonment. They try to escape closeness because closeness makes them vulnerable, and vulnerability feels like danger. But here's the paradox: when they finally lose someone who truly cared, that fear of abandonment they've been running from comes crashing down. The very wall they built to keep pain out becomes the prison that locks them inside with it. That's when the realization hits. The space they thought would bring them freedom now feels like emptiness. The silence they thought would be peace now echoes with regret. There's a moment that every avoidant faces when the person they pushed away doesn't come back. At first, they expect the usual cycle: distance, conflict, reconciliation. They rely on the pattern of you reaching out, fixing, and holding the connection together. But when you break that cycle, when you no longer chase, everything shifts. They begin to feel the absence not as space, but as a loss that cuts deeper than they imagined. It's not just the loss of your presence. It's the loss of certainty, the loss of a safe place, the loss of the love they never knew how to fully receive. And this realization doesn't come like a whisper. It hits like a storm. It shows up in the quiet moments when they expect a message from you and it never comes. It shows up when they scroll through memories, suddenly aware that the connection they took for granted has slipped through their fingers. It shows up when they see you standing strong, moving forward, no longer orbiting around their behavior, no longer waiting for their permission to feel worthy. That's when their fear becomes undeniable. They see that they didn't just lose a person. They lost the opportunity to be loved in a way that could have changed them. At the core, this is not about punishment or revenge. It's about truth. The truth is that human beings are wired for connection. Even the most avoidant person, no matter how distant they seem, craves love. They crave safety. They crave acceptance. They crave intimacy. When they realize they've lost the one person who is willing to give that unconditionally, the arm or they've been hiding behind begins to crack. They may not admit it. They may fight it, but deep down, the fear of being truly alone starts to take over, and that fear is far more powerful than the fear of closeness ever was. The shift is brutal because it forces them to confront what they've been avoiding their whole life: the cost of pushing away love. They recognize that the person they lost was not just a chapter, but possibly the anchor that grounded them. They recognize that what they thought was freedom was actually fear disguised as independence. They recognize that the love they ran from was exactly the love they needed. And in that recognition lies their deepest regret, because once they see it, they cannot unsee it. Your strength exposes their weakness. When you've been with someone who carries avoidant tendencies, they often believe they hold the upper hand by withdrawing, by keeping their distance, by pulling away when the relationship begins to demand depth and vulnerability. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you no longer bend yourself to accommodate their walls, something powerful begins to happen. Your strength, your ability to stand firm in your own value, throws light on the cracks in their armor. They are no longer the one controlling the tempo, because you've shifted from dependence to independence. This is where their weakness begins to reveal itself. Avoidants survive on the illusion of control. They push love away because deep down they fear abandonment, they fear not being enough, and they fear being consumed by intimacy. As long as you're the one reaching out, trying harder, and proving your worth, they feel secure in their distance. But when you draw a line and decide, I am enough with or without you, their system collapses. That strength you embody exposes the weakness they've been hiding behind all along. It's like holding up a mirror to them. They see that the very behavior they thought kept them safe has actually cost them the one person who truly cared. In that space, the power dynamic flips. What once looked like indifference from them turns into discomfort. They begin to feel the emptiness of their choices. Your strength, your decision to stop giving endless energy to someone who isn't ready to meet you, forces them to face what they've avoided their whole life: real intimacy and accountability. They thought walking away or pulling back would free them, but instead it leaves them with the reality that freedom without connection is just loneliness. Your strength highlights this truth more than words ever could, and here's the deeper truth: strength is magnetic. When you show that you don't collapse in their absence, that you can thrive, grow, and glow without them, they feel the sting of contrast. Their weakness is no longer hidden in shadows because you've become a living example of resilience. They can't deny the energy shift. They can't deny that the one they pushed away has become stronger, brighter, and more alive than ever. That contrast unsettles them. It makes them question their decisions, their walls, their patterns. Your strength becomes the teacher they never asked for but desperately need. It reveals that avoidance doesn't shield them, it sabotages them. It proves that what they believed was power keeping you at arm's length was actually fear. And once they see it, they can't unsee it. When you finally decide to value yourself, something powerful happens. For so long, the avoidant believes they are the one in control, holding the upper hand by pulling away and creating distance. But when you shift your focus inward and begin to prioritize your own growth, your own peace, your own joy, that illusion of control shatters. Self-worth becomes the ultimate game changer. It sends a clear message. You are no longer available to be treated as less than you deserve. You're no longer waiting around for breadcrumbs of affection. You're standing tall, rooted in your value, and that shift is undeniable. When you raise your standards, the entire dynamic of the relationship changes. The avoidant, who once thought your love was guaranteed, suddenly faces the harsh truth that love is not endless when it is not respected. The energy flips. Where once they had the power to push you away and expect you to return, now you've chosen not to play that game. Self-worth teaches you to walk away with dignity, not anger, but with certainty that you deserve more. And that certainty is magnetic. The avoidant begins to feel the weight of what they've lost, because your absence carries more power than your presence ever did when you were undervaluing yourself. This realization often cuts deeper than words ever could. When you embody your worth, you stop chasing, you stop explaining, you stop justifying your existence in someone's life. That silence, that strength, echoes louder than any argument. It's in that moment the avoidant starts to realize they didn't just lose a partner. They lost someone who was willing to love them unconditionally, someone who offered them safety and connection. Despite their walls, they feel the absence of your energy, your consistency, your devotion, and they recognize it was never guaranteed. Self-worth makes you unshakable, and that's when they begin to feel shaky. Your power no longer lies in convincing them to stay, but in proving to yourself that you can thrive without them. That internal shift is what unsettles the avoidant most. They see you creating, growing, becoming stronger, and they understand they can no longer control the narrative. The cycle they relied on is broken, the pattern of push and pull is destroyed, self-worth removes you from the cycle entirely, and that's where their regret is born. Because now, they're not just facing the loss of a relationship, they're facing the reality that you will never again accept less than you deserve. When someone avoids intimacy, they often convince themselves they are in control. They create distance, shut down conversations, and retreat into their own world, believing that space equals safety. But when reality strikes, and they suddenly lose the very person who brought love, consistency, and presence into their life, everything changes. The silence they once craved becomes heavy, and the absence of your energy forces them to face the truth. They were never in control. What they thought was freedom turns into loneliness, and the running only leads them back to an empty space that no longer includes you. When the avoidant realizes you're gone, their deepest fear comes alive. Avoidants often build their lives around the illusion that they don't need anyone. They tell themselves they're fine alone, that dependency is weakness, that love can wait until they're ready. But the moment they lose someone who genuinely cared, the mask cracks. That fear of abandonment, the very thing they tried to escape, rises up stronger than ever. They see clearly that the distance they created has cost them the one connection they secretly wanted, but were too afraid to admit. It's a shock that rattles them to the core because it proves that their strategy of detachment doesn't protect them. It destroys what they value most. Your strength is the mirror that reveals their weakness. The moment you choose to stand firm, to no longer chase, to no longer beg for scraps of attention, the balance shifts. They're confronted with a version of you they didn't expect, someone who no longer plays by their rules. That strength makes them see how fragile their walls truly are. The more you step into your power, the more they realize how powerless they've been all along. They can no longer hide behind excuses or distractions, because your actions speak louder than their avoidance. By refusing to participate in the cycle, you shine a spotlight on the very behavior they thought was invisible. Self-worth is the turning point in every dynamic. When you stop seeking validation from someone who withholds it, the energy shifts completely. Instead of fighting for space in their world, you create your own. You fill it with self-respect, growth, and love that doesn't require permission. This is where the true power lies, not in convincing them to change, but in demonstrating through your actions that you will not settle for less than what you deserve. That self-worth makes the avoidant realize that they've lost more than a person. They've lost the chance to be with someone who knows their value, someone who could have built something lasting if only they'd been willing to show up. Your freedom is the avoidant's regret. In the beginning, they may have mistaken your love for dependency, your presence for something guaranteed. But once you break free, once you live fully without them, the picture becomes clear. You are no longer waiting, no longer stuck in their push and pull game. That independence makes them confront what they threw away, and regret becomes the weight they carry. Your liberation is the proof that you never needed them to complete you, and that truth cuts deeper than their silence ever could.